And the fact that we are living now does not mean that we can break the integrities of the past. It should be that we would be stronger in keeping them, and perhaps adapt them a little more to our own current needs. But when the great teachings say, "Thou shalt not kill," that is exactly what they mean. And for thousands of years we have broken this rule. We have justified it by every conceivable excuse. We have called it patriotism. We have called it inevitable. We have regarded it as a useful discipline. We have also thought of it as curbing the rapidity of population growths. But actually, the simple statement is the fact. And regardless of how we try to avoid and evade, the only thing that we can gain by destroying life is finally to destroy ourselves. So all the way along, we have this type of thing. Thou shalt not covet. These words have great meaning. In a world, millions of people accepting a religion with this statement in it and ignoring it completely. Why do they ignore it? Simply because their own internal integration has not recorded in the mind the validity of this statement. We have gone through all kinds of experiences of coveting, and our friends have, and our relatives have, and our world has. And we have seen the distress and misery. But when we decide to covet, we do. Now, this means that the discipline of the mind is not strong enough to protect us from the weaknesses of our own attitudes. So we discover the mind has two distinct processes. One is to defend the right, and the other is to tear it down. Wherever a rule is uncomfortable, our first thought is to get rid of it. As a result of getting rid of it, we get into trouble, because practically every important rule of life has to be obeyed. And man was created, and not only to dream and to hope and to think, but also to obey the great laws of the universe in which he lives. Now, memory is extremely important in helping us to understand laws that we cannot penetrate metaphysically. We cannot find out how and why God says that we should love one another. We know this has descended to us as an axiom out of the past. We have internally and innately recognized it as highly desirable. We find it in the words of the teachers we revere. To the Christian, it is in the words of Christ. To the Buddhist, in the words of Buddha. And strangely as it may seem, love is one of the primary words of Muhammad. But with all this, why do we ignore it, compromise it, or misapply it? Because we cannot support the point of view with mental assurance. We have not the ability to quietly tune in upon the meaning of this word as we have experienced it ourselves. We are unable to divide the words from the deeds most closely associated with them. That's the reason why we have to say that the mind exercises censorship, that it gives us the background, the justification. It provides us with the torch and the research necessary to prove that integrity is right and that compromise is a desperate mistake. Now, if that's true, we go along and we finally clutter the mind up thoroughly with everything you can think of. We clutter it with our opinions and our thoughts and our habits. We clutter it with all our various avocational interests. We spend a whole lifetime trying to be good bankers or good lawyers and load the mind with these problems. We come home to sick children and load the mind with their problems. We also have troubles with our friends and take those on. and we watch the newspaper and try to take on the difficulties of humanity. By the time we reach middle life, we have a badly overworked mental structure. We are no longer in the position to control our own minds. We create all kinds of strange chemistries and interrelationships which we are not even constantly aware of. We do not know that we are thinking these thoughts. And if we do know they're coming through, we do not know where they come from or why. And so, by the time we reach 40 or 45 years of age, we are beginning to have poor judgment. A judgment in which we cannot get a clear answer when we ask ourselves a question. The answer comes through with all kinds of ifs, buts, and ands. Or perhaps we get so weary trying to find the answer we give up anyway. The mind can become a haunted house. It is full like an attic of antiques, things of some of which are very valuable and some are not very valuable. Not long ago, a family that I know did a little attic cleaning, and they finally found something that looked as though it might be worth $1 or $2, so they took it to a dealer, and the dealer gave them $10 for it. He then turned around and sold it to someone else for $500. The individual didn't know the value of what he had. Other people do not know the value of what they think. Others still don't realize that the skills that they accumulated over a lifetime have value. And because of the lack of discipline, they do not know how to call upon the resources of their own minds. Because of this type of thing, a great many individuals who have had a rich life as far as experience is concerned are still subject to all the ills that flesh is heir to. They do not learn the lesson. Now, as we grow older, we find that this mind becomes tired. It is weary of the mistakes that it is making, but does not seem to get around to finding out why it makes these mistakes. It follows the general point of view that if I think this way, this is the way it is. And we feel that freedom and liberty and emancipation mean that our own thoughts are just as good as anyone else's, and if probabilities a little better. And we also feel that while we may not want to accept the thoughts of others, there is every reason why they should accept our thoughts. All this leads usually to a rather lonely old age, because people just do not react the way we think they should. And the reason we think they should is because we don't think at all anyway. We just want them to and assume our own infallibility, although our minds have never been able to demonstrate it in any sense of the word. So by the time we go along, we begin to be what some have called disillusioned. We are tired of what we consider to be a life well lived, which nobody cares about or respects. Disillusionment means that we have gradually lost our illusions. An illusion being itself unreal, if it is lost, if we are disillusioned, all we have lost is something that didn't exist in the first place. Disillusionment does not mean that we are tired or disappointed in truth. It means that we are tired or disappointed in the misinterpretations we have put upon various beliefs and opinions. But as we go along, we notice something happens. And that is that the mind, getting fatigued, and also suffering from a kind of intellectual indigestion, resulting from the way it has been nourished or misnourished, begins to drop out things. The mind isn't storing up things as rapidly as it used to, because every attic is full. It is not learning more because it has not been able to digest what it has learned. And gradually we notice a process coming over the mind's own functions. And that is that the memory continuities break down.